All right, this is lesson 5 in Unit 2 of Weimar and Nazi Germany. This lesson is going to focus on how did the Nazis take advantage of the Depression. Now, in the previous lesson, we looked at the Wall Street crash and how it had a serious impact on Germany, which led to a depression which impacted near enough the whole population. By the end of this lesson, we're going to be able to recall the impact of the Depression, explain the role the Nazis played in gaining support, and evaluate the main actions of the Nazis and their overall success to prepare for future interpretation questions. So I'm just going to put some questions on the board to start off with. Your job is just to write the sentence and choose the correct answer. All of those questions are based on last lesson. So if you pause the video here, write the answers down. If you're unsure, look back on your notes from last lesson. Right, so what we're going to look at today, there's going to be 3 things we look at, not 4. Number 1, the mistakes of the Weimar government, what the Nazis did to begin to appeal to the masses, and how did the Nazis appeal to different groups. So firstly, reason number 1, if you write the subtitle down, failures of the government / Chancellor Brüning. So the Weimar government faced significant problems during this period of 29 to 32, to the point that by the end of this period, Hitler became the Chancellor and the Weimar was nearly out of existence. So I'm just going to go through each chancellor that was during this depression. You had a chancellor called Chancellor Müller, but the more important individual is Chancellor Brüning. And while I go through this, you've got to jot down 5 mistakes that the government made during this period. And next to each of the mistakes, you want to explain how that would help the Nazis in the long run. So firstly, Müller wanted to raise taxes and put unemployment benefits up from 3% to 3.5, put the unemployment benefit up from 3 to 3.5%. So taxes were going to pay for the unemployment benefit. Müller was actually forced to resign in 1930 because the government didn't trust Müller. He's not a significantly important part in this argument. Brüning, on the other hand, is absolutely integral. So Brüning thought that the best way to manage the crisis was balancing the budget by reducing spending and raising taxes. Don't forget that at this time, 6 million people were unemployed. So that causes significant problems. If you are raising the taxes and people cannot pay, it causes big issues. In March 1930, he introduced a wage cut of 2.5% for civil servants. But actually, this was blocked by the government. He wanted to introduce it, but he didn't have enough support in the Reichstag. To get the laws passed, Brüning had to convince the president, Hindenburg, to use Article 48, which showed that democracy was significantly weak. Brüning introduced taxes on beer, sugar, which were basic necessities in Germany. And that, again, made it harder for the unemployed, the poor, to be able to afford basic goods. In 1931, he did actually cut the wage of the government workers, the civil servants. He cut it by 23%. So there was a lot of unhappiness within the government about how Brüning was treating them. Furthermore, he cut unemployment benefit by 60%. Now, this is probably one of the biggest mistakes he made, because if you think about it, 6 million people were unemployed and their unemployment benefit were cut by 60%. He was more focused on balancing the budget, making sure that Germany will basically rebuild, rather than helping the people. This is why Brüning got the nickname the Hunger Chancellor, because people were starving under his control. And Brüning's ideas pushed people towards the Nazi Party. Now we'll look at what the Nazi Party did on top of this. But a lot of people saw the Nazi Party as a savior because of what they were promising. The government failed its people in a time of crisis. So what you need to do is bullet point 5 things that the government did that caused problems during this period. Right, now the second reason why the Nazis were able to take advantage of the Depression was actually the actions of the Nazis themselves. So why might the following things appeal to the people of Germany at the time? An organised party with a secure leader, a leader who promised work and bread, party who got the support from big business, and a party who was willing to change ideas if people did not like them, and a party who had groups such as the SA and the SS to give protection. Your job is to read the information on what the Nazis did and write 3 to 5 facts down about how this would help the Nazis get power. So the first subheading is propaganda. So the leader of propaganda was a man called Joseph Goebbels, a genius in manipulation and brainwashing. He, alongside Hitler, had the key ideas of the Nazi Party and realized that playing on the emotions, playing on the right messages was absolutely vital in ensuring that people would start to follow and vote Nazi. The Nazis made sure their leaders were masters of propaganda and local groups were trained to get the message across. So everyone had the same skill set to make sure the messages got across. And it wasn't just based on the speech and charisma of Adolf Hitler. One of the most popular types of propaganda was anti-communism. And the reason for this, very simply, is because the Nazis realized that they needed to win the working class over, and they needed to turn people against the communists to be able to be successful. So this would lead to more votes for the Nazis in the long run. By using anti-communist propaganda, it would basically ensure that they try and change the attitudes of the working class. On top of this, that links massively, is the propaganda promised the German people work and bread. It really appealed to the 6 million people who were unemployed in Germany due to the Depression. And also the anti-communist message also really appealed to the people who owned big businesses, because they were scared of money being shared, as communism believed in spreading money equally and that wealth should not be a thing that dictates society. The second way the Nazis took advantage of the Depression was their own flexibility. Now, if the Nazis did something that people didn't like, they changed it. For example, once Hitler spoke about nationalizing industry, which means taking central control of it, realized people didn't like it, so he just changed it. Now, the Nazis, as time went on, realized, especially during the Depression, that it didn't actually matter what you promise as long as people trust you, which led to the Nazis promoting vague sayings such as work and bread, and also such as make Germany great again. There were no specifics within their promises, which showed that actually they could get away with maybe not fully delivering at times, because the people didn't actually know what it meant to make Germany great again. In their eyes, it was just getting the unemployment figure down and people having homes and more money. Now, as the Nazis were so flexible, a lot of people did not actually know what they stood for, which made them appealing because they stood for so many different things. There was financial support for the Nazis. Now, without the financial support, the Nazis wouldn't be able to develop their propaganda. So Hitler and the Nazis could not have conducted their campaign without support. For example, in 1932, 600,000 of the Nazis' economic program were produced and distributed before the July 32 election. If you have the financial support of a range of people, then you are able to spread your message to a much bigger demographic. In 1932, Hitler also developed a close relationship with Hugenberg. Don't mix that up with Hindenburg. Hugenberg was a right-wing newspaper owner, which meant that Hitler was able to spread his message further, and especially the messages like work and bread and make Germany great again. And then Hitler also had support from key industrialists such as Krupp, Bosch, and Thyssen. Hitler also had the role of the SA. Now, the SA were used to disrupt meetings of political parties, and also at times the SA would be used to make it look like they were reasserting their the control within Germany. Now, Ernst Röhm was reappointed in 1931 after being sacked in 1925. But within a year, the membership of the SA increased, which made the Nazis look more professional and looks like they could protect the country. And the SA also attacked and put down groups such as the Communist Army, the Red Frontier Fighters. And the last thing that's actually very important in this whole argument is the fact that in 1932, Hitler attempted to become the president of Germany, which increased his profile. Now, his profile was very much based around his oracy skills, which were pivotal in election results rising. He knew how to work an audience and attacked many people in his speeches. But also at the same time, he was able to attract people to them. There was many historians' accounts that people queued for hours to see Hitler speak. The fact that most of Hitler's, or nearly all of Hitler's speeches, were at full capacity, and because they were at full capacity, the party membership began to increase because more people heard him speak, saw the patriotic passion behind his speeches. Hitler was aware, as we mentioned a few lessons ago, that to take power, he needed to present his party as law-abiding, but also make sure that his speeches appealed to the masses. There are some stories that Hitler mesmerized people with his piercing blue eyes, standing up to stage for 20 minutes in silence to build the tension and excitement of what he was about to say. Now, bear in mind the weaknesses of the government at this stage. Hitler had one thing that every other leader lacked, and that was charisma. He was seen as a savior during one of the toughest times that Germany went through, and voting showed this, with the Nazi Party gradually increasing from 1930, remember, from about 3% to roughly 38%. And in 1932, Hitler built his profile further by attempting to become the president of Germany. Now, he lost, but he went up against Hindenburg and Thälmann, who was a communist. And Hitler actually forced this election into 2 votes. For Hindenburg to win, he needed 50%, but he didn't get it first time round. In the second attempt, Hitler came second with 13.4 million votes. 2 key things here. Number 1, he beat the communists by 10 million votes, showing how the head the Nazis were of them at this stage. And number 2, during this campaign, Hitler was able to spread his message on a much broader scale, on a national scale, because he was traveling around Germany on a charter plane, giving up to 5 speeches a day, whereas Hindenburg could only do 1 because he was getting older. He was in his 80s. So that's what the Nazis did to take advantage. And the third really important reason is, how did the Nazis win over the people of Germany? There were so many different groups that were unhappy because of the Wall Street crash. Farmers were in debt, workers didn't have a job, middle class lost their savings, big businesses' production had dropped by 40%, young people had no real future, and likewise with women, it was a very difficult time. So what you need to do is write those 5 groups down and apply this evidence to these groups. So first of all, the Nazis promised this group of people work and bread, while also coming across as very strong. Hitler appealed to this group as he could fight off the threat of communism. This group was a struggle, as they were more likely to vote for the Communist Party at the start. This group supported the Nazi Party by putting lots of money into their propaganda, such as Bosch and Krupp. This group supported Hitler as during the Depression, they lost a lot of savings. They saw Hitler as a Superman who could save them. The Nazi Party came across as very exciting, colourful, and full of atmosphere. Hitler's speeches engrossed this group and encouraged them to support from a young age. The Nazis talked about tradition, and this group believed that the Weimar Republic had declined morally. Hitler gained support from this group by promising that land would not be confiscated and prices would remain stable. He also promised to wipe their debts. This group allowed Hitler to use his newspaper to spread propaganda. This group liked how organized the Nazis were, as the SA were organized and strong. This group or groups liked the propaganda as it showed Hitler would fight away communism, bringing pride back to their country and help them recover from depression. And Hitler appealed to this group as he said that voting for the Nazis was best for country and their families. Family life appealed to this group. So once you've done that, just consider which groups do you think were easy to win over and why, and which groups were more difficult and why. Just to finish off this lesson then, of what we've gone through today, which of the 3 factors do you think helped the Nazis the most and why? Was it the mistakes of Brüning? Was it the Nazis' approach? Or was it the fact that the Nazis were able to appeal to certain groups of people? Finish this lesson off by writing a paragraph in your book explaining using a Peel paragraph.